thanks to Rip City and Pootie, I can have a little energy for this board retreat. Usually I'm so worn out from Trimet bus calls, I can't do any of this. But today they did all the work, so I can listen to a little bit of this.
Snapshot of what we
ended here.
Shared with the committee over the course of 3 meetings, and we're just going to give you a small taste of it for context. But all the full reports and the full presentations are part of your board packets in the historical context, and we still have a lot more to do in terms of unpacking. After hearing about the online surveys, we're going to hear from Michelle Neese, the president of DHM Research, who not only did the lion's share of coordination around the focus groups, but also helped develop the actual convening and moderator toolkit. And her team did a lot of work to synthesize what was found. And there's a larger report that has presentations or the findings from each of the community-based organizations that actually convene their folks, and that's where she will draw her presentation materials from. And just again, for context, and Doug said this earlier, this research and the information you're going to hear is directly from the responses of all of those online surveys, for all of those non-English responses as well. And one of the things that we were able to leverage by partnering with community is we went beyond the 7 languages. We were able to translate the survey into online, and we were able to get up to 13 languages supported because community-based organizations had that expertise and were able, during the one-on-one interview process, to connect those interviews in Swahili and Korean and other languages beyond the survey. And again, when you see for context for the actual focus group information, that was the response of 271 folks across 31 different focus groups. And one of the promising practices that came out of this is really to start looking more towards online media, specifically online media, and to engage communities that speak languages other than English. And we had a lot of success in looking at and working with Russian websites to connect, or Facebook sites to connect with Spanish and other communities. And I think we're going to continue to do that, as well as the traditional investments. And of course, you know that we also leverage our own existing committees, both the TIAC committee and CAT and our youth committee, but also we brought in groups of writers that are part of the Writers Club and groups of writers that participate in our Low Income Pair program. And then we were able to leverage the wealth of internal feedback from our own Trimet employees. So now I'm going to ask Jeff to give the keys to the car to Madeline and ask her to walk you through the online research feedback. And again, this is a shortened version of what we shared with the committee. Let's see if this...
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me and see my screen? See my mouse moving?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as John said, I'll just be giving you an abridged version of the methods and results from our online surveys. We did both a public-facing survey and an employee survey. The public survey received 12,698 responses, employee survey 794. I'm only going to have time to present you with the most relevant slides due to the time constraints. You do have the longer version, though, in your packet. So we'll start with the public survey. As John mentioned, it was available in 8 languages, English, Spanish, Russian, etc. And we emailed it out to tens of thousands of people, the Writers Club, low-income card holders, Trimet business partners, WorkSource Oregon, and more. We also shared it via our project website on Facebook and on Twitter, and we successfully used Facebook ads to reach non-English language respondents. It was also promoted by our community-based organization partners and administered by them in one-on-one interviews in real time, as John mentioned, and to reach even more languages. And we left this survey open for a long window from August 17th through October 7th so that as many voices as possible could be heard. And again, close to 13,000 completed surveys for the public-facing. So a few caveats before we get into the results. First and foremost, this was not designed or intended to be a scientific poll that would be a random sample of the people in our area.
Come on, get to it.
Envisioned as more of a massive online listening session, just trying to cast a broad net, hear from as many perspectives as possible. And one thing that I do want to point out is shortly after we released this survey, there was a lot of activity around it on Twitter. So, for example, here's a tweet from August 19th. Hey, what if you took the survey and told Trimet there should be no costs and no fares on public transit?
This was a whole... Where's the tweet? Oh, come on. Hey, you think... No, that's not... Where's the big
and so a lot of the people who
Hey,
were sharing it
you.
with their friends and followers, they shared a link without the source tags.
Oh wait, okay, they didn't put the. Yeah, we covered this was. Yeah, well, I wish I could find that. I didn't put that on my blog, did I? No, I think I didn't. But I know who that did that. But see, they got 161 retweets and 2. See, they're real popular, whoever they are. You know, I'm lucky to get 2. Nobody likes me. Everybody's pissed off at me.
So we can sort of break this out a little bit and look at this group of folks. It made up 24% of the total responses, and they were more likely to be younger, whiter, and non-binary or other gender identity.
How do you know that? How do you know that from a tweet? How do you know who that is? How do you know their gender, their race, or any of that from a tweet?
And I want to note that, as with any survey, there was self-selection bias involved. Given COVID, protests, economy, and wildfires, this just may not have been a priority for many people. So we were more likely to get responses from passionate individuals on either end of the debate about policing. So
Well,
here's a look
what
at the
kind of answer
demographic
is
breakdown
that?
of our respondents. We had 52%
How do they
identify
know
as
this
female,
shit
40 as
anyway?
male, and 8% is non-binary or other gender identity. Good distribution across our age groups. And our income level, we had 27% at or below
Was this
150%
asked on
of the
the
federal
test or
poverty
on
level,
the stupid
around 30%
question
transit
thing? I don't
dependent,
remember.
and 27% people of color. So for these 3 categories, we were happy to see that this is a pretty close match to the demographics of the region. And here's a finer grained look at the race and ethnic identities of our respondents. So select all that apply. And here are the details of the survey language. So about 94% of our responses were in English, about 6% in other languages, primarily Spanish. We had representation from all 3 counties, as well as Clark County across the river and other counties. Most respondents were from Multnomah County. 21% of our respondents identified as having a disability or other impairment. And again, 24% of respondents, we didn't have the source tag, the metadata. So that was mostly associated with that Twitter activity in August. So we'll get into some of the data now. We started our survey out by asking people about their feelings of safety and welcome on Trimet. One of our questions was, prior to COVID-19.
Okay, this is all right. Yeah, let's look at good, fair, poor. Okay, well, that's not too bad. So only 1 out of 5 people feel very safe. Somewhat safe is like fair. If you rate it in, do you feel safe? Don't feel safe? Here's how it should be. And I say it over and over. Do you feel safe? And here's the answers. Yes. No. No opinion. 3 answers. Not a whole bunch of different. See, this is how these surveys always get answers to prove their point, by having 5 different things to say rather than, here's the question. Do you feel safe on Trimet? Yes. No. No response. But they do it this way. So 1 in 5 feel safe, and 42% don't even, somewhat doesn't mean anything. Okay, 15 had no opinion. And only 5% said very unsafe. Yeah, sure. Total unsafe. Okay, yeah. All right, total unsafe is the same as very safe. That actually makes sense. Yeah, this makes sense to me. This to me, as an observer and an ex-bus driver, it looks logical. It looks like they're doing pretty good with the statistics so far watching this. Doesn't look like they're really jerry-rigging them at all.
How safe did you generally feel on board Max? And here you see the total results. So about 64% of people felt safe on Max before COVID, 15% neutral, and 22% total felt unsafe. And certain groups were more likely than their comparison groups to feel unsafe. So Native Americans significantly more likely than white people to feel unsafe. Similarly with Black people and people of color in general. Disabled people more likely to feel unsafe than those who did not identify as having a disability. And we also asked about bus. I'm not showing this due to time, but it was a similar overall pattern. Although people tended to feel safer on buses, overall the total unsafe was just 14% for bus.
Yeah, because there's a driver.
So we followed up that question for those people who felt unsafe on Max with a question about what made you feel unsafe. They had this menu of options and they could check all.
See, this doesn't add up to 100%. So I don't know how do you have 300%? Okay. 61%, 50, there's 101% right there. Here's another 60, here's 170%, there's 200%. How do they come up with this? Okay, this doesn't make sense.
All that apply. The most commonly selected one.
And the reason I bring it up is because this is another example of they skew the results so that they don't look so bad.
Was other riders, followed by lack of transit police and lack of unarmed security. And we were curious which groups were most interested in getting more transit police or more likely to have transit police make them feel safe. So these groups here, compared to their comparison groups, were more likely to select lack of transit police. Those 65 and older, Black and African American respondents, and those who completed the survey in a language other than English. So we also asked prior to COVID-19, which of the following, if any, helped you feel safe when writing Trimet? This was another select all that apply question. The top result was lighting. A lot of agreement that is helpful to a safe environment, followed by presence of other riders and security cameras. A few different staff types followed. Again, we wanted to look a little closer at who is...
this is interesting. Look at this. Prior to COVID, which of the following helped you? Transit police are way down here. That's interesting. COVID-19! Where's my COVID-19?
Who transit police make feel safer. So these groups here were more likely than others to choose presence of transit police to make you feel safer. So non-English survey respondents, 65 and older, etc. We asked, how welcome do you feel when writing Trimet? And so 71% total felt welcome. Many feeling very welcome. 23% were neutral.
No, 42%. Why would... It's a transit system, okay? You don't feel welcome, you just get on it. Somewhat welcome. Neither welcome or no, yeah. Totally unwelcome. Why would anybody feel It's a transit system. This is a stupid question.
About this, and 6% overall felt unwelcome. Unfortunately, certain groups were more likely to feel unwelcome, including Black or African American respondents, Native American, people completing the survey in the language other than English, people of color.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
So then we followed up those questions with some questions about respondent support.
How to spend peanuts, as Marcus Monday said, how to spend peanuts on nothing.
Or alternative approaches to safety and security, or how they thought we should spend the $1.8 million. So we presented them with a menu of 5 options in a matrix-style question. This is shortened here just for the slide, but it was mobile health crisis intervention teams who are specialized in helping people in mental health crisis or having drug and alcohol issues. Training on anti-racism, de-escalation, mental health, and more for Trimet staff. Transparent reporting about crime, community grants for rider advocates, and a phone app for real-time reporting. And the mobile health crisis intervention team idea was the most popular with our respondents. 88% of them were supportive. So the scale goes from very supportive through neutral through very unsupportive and don't know. Training was next, and then reporting.
What?
We followed these questions up with some about their feelings about staff types and security on Trimet.
I mean, this is just not...
So we had a similar matrix. When thinking about your personal safety, how important is each of these staff types? On-street customer service, unarmed security staff, transit police officers, and fare/code inspectors, with the choices being from very important through very unimportant and don't know. And so on-street customer service was identified as very important feeling. as important to feelings of personal safety by a majority of the respondents. This was followed by unarmed security staff, and feelings were more mixed about transit police officers and fare/code inspectors, with a decent number of people saying that they were actually very unimportant to their feelings of personal safety. So some of that anti-policing sentiment coming through here in these responses. We then asked which of these statements best matches your point of view. Statements here at the left. So 35% of people agreed that there isn't enough security on Trimet. 17% thought there is about the right amount of security on Trimet. 22% thought there is too much security on Trimet. 14% said they didn't know, and 12% said none of the above. So groups here are the groups who are more likely to think there isn't enough security
This is
on the system.
confusing
So
here.
again,
Hold on.
non-English survey respondents,
I got to do this.
those 65 and older, Black African-American people of color. And here are groups more likely to think there was too much security. So non-binary or other gender identity, this people with a source unknown associated with that Twitter activity, youth, low-income and disabled writers.
Yeah, I mean, what does this mean?
We asked a similar question, which of the statements best matches your point of view here. So 43% of people agreed that they didn't want police on Trimet, even if that could make some people feel less safe. Whereas 36% said although police may make some people feel less safe, they're necessary for security. 13% none of the above, 7 don't know. And here you see the groups more likely to choose I don't want police. And here are the groups more likely to think that they're necessary.
Non-English? What?
So key takeaways from the public survey.
This is ridiculous.
People do want to see more Trimet staff on the system. However, while it's clear that more customer service and unarmed staff are preferred, feelings are mixed about transit police. And among the alternatives given for spending the $1.8 million in funding, people were most supportive of creating a crisis intervention team, followed by training on anti-racism, cultural competency.
Spend the $1.8 million on the guardian angels. They had them before, they were effective, and they don't even come up in this discussion. It doesn't even come up. It's like they don't even talk about it. That's how fucking fucked up this shit is.
Mental health and de-escalation. And finally, opinions about whether fare should be enforced or not were mixed. I didn't actually show the slide with the data that supports this takeaway, but it is in your longer version if you want to take a look at that. So quickly, we'll go through some of the highlights from the employee survey. Again, we had 794 responses, a good response rate for Trimet. 45% of those respondents were frontline staff, and they self-identified at the start of this.
So they got 794 responses, half of which were frontline staff. If they interacted with, does that mean they're bus drivers or what? What does that mean? Why don't they just say 45% were bus drivers? Or because the only people that interact with the public are the bus drivers and the fare people. But the bus drivers are the way big majority.
The survey is frontline if they interacted with riders face-to-face on a regular basis. And in this survey, we asked similar questions to the public, some of the same questions, but also some tailored to our staff. So for our frontline employees, we asked how safe.
Yeah, look at this. Very, very safe. Somewhat safe. Somewhat unsafe. Very unsafe. I don't know, man. I don't know. This somewhat category really screws it up. Do you feel safe? Yes. No. No answer.
Did you generally feel when doing your job before COVID? And around half, 49%, said that they felt safe before COVID. 17% were neutral, and around a third.
COVID world order, the Great Reset. The Great Reset. Are you okay? Let's look that up. Where's that guy? What's his name? Where's that fucking German guy? Great Reset. I can't find it. Anyway, there's a guy that talks about this. One guy. And it's very scary because they tell you right out in the thing that they're all this shit they're pulling on people, that this is all planned out. This is all planned out under the guise of trying to protect us. They're killing us.
Third,
They pretend they care, but they're killing us instead. And we're like out to lunch, man. As a society, we don't know. We like to sit here. Whatever you say goes. Whatever Trump says, whatever Biden says, whatever Kate Brown says, whatever Charlie Breaker says, whatever Cuomo. Everybody just goes along.
32% felt unsafe before COVID. We gave them a list of options for what made them feel unsafe, and what came to the top was disruptive or difficult people.
Yeah, obviously.
That was followed by lack of transit police, lack of fair enforcement, lack of non-security staff.
Once again, it doesn't add up to 100%.
We also gave them a chance to list their number one safety and security concern when doing their job before COVID in an open-ended format. And just looking at the themes that came out of that, 62% of them, the frontline staff, mentioned passenger issues as a number one concern. And some of the sub-themes there were aggressive, hostile, or abusive passengers, violence, mental health issues, houseless issues, substance abuse. Others mentioned the need to enforce rules, staffing concerns, and issues with management support.
7%, that's all?
We asked our frontline employees, do you think safety and security conditions have gotten worse or better over the past few years? And 51% said much worse. 33.
Okay, so 84% said worse. So that's a huge majority say everything is worse.
Somewhat worse, so that's 84% total thinking things have gotten worse. 10% no change, and only 6% thinking things were getting better over the last few years.
What's the matter?
Security.
Who are those 6%? Are they out of their fucking minds? Are they that stupid?
And we asked our employees a similar question, presenting them with the same menu of 5 options for redirecting that $1.8 million. And as with the public, they selected the Mobile Health Crisis Intervention Team as their top priority. And then when we asked sort of a clarification.
I don't know what the hell they're talking about, a mobile health. What are they talking about? Is that like 3 people in a van that go around? That doesn't make any sense even, okay? You need people on the buses. You need guardian angels. Okay, you need people spread throughout the system to be there when the shit goes down. I don't know what this is even is. Nobody knows what this is. What do you mean mobile health crisis center? What is that supposed to mean? They haven't said what it means.
Question is to follow up. Which of these 5 would you choose if you could only choose one? Number 2 was training, followed by reporting. So the priorities line up well with the public priorities. Key takeaways from the employee survey. A third of frontline employees didn't feel safe doing their work prior to COVID even. Over 8 out of 10 frontline employees say safety and security has gotten worse over the past few years. And frontline employees want more staff added, especially transit police, rules enforced to help with disruptive or violent passengers, and more management support. As with public, the creation of a crisis intervention team was the most supported alternative way to spend the $1.8 million, followed by training and a transparent crime reporting system. And again, there are more details in that longer slide deck that you were given if you want to take a look. So in wrapping up, I just want to thank John for his leadership and give a huge shout out to Ginger Shank, my partner through all of this. It wouldn't have been possible without her. Thank you all.
Yeah,
thank you, Madeline. And do we want to pause for some initial questions before we move on to the community focus group feedback and report?
Yes, I would, John. If I could, I'd like to ask a question.
Please proceed, Director Edwards.
Madeline, thank you very much for that report. My question would be, have we looked at any other studies of just the general attitude and behaviors across the country over the last few years? Because I guess when I think about this, I think about our leadership over the past 4 years, and that has changed the demeanor of our society. And but I don't have any studies or any surveys that can justify that. But I know it to be true.
Yeah, he's right. The Trump effect. Trump has said it's okay to be a racist, crazy motherfucker, man. And let's key up my favorite video about the Trump effect. I love this video. It's just great. Hold on. Any chance I get to entertain myself, I always take it. Where's the history? Let's see. Where? Here it is. We want freedom for the world. Get that. Okay, here's the Trump effect. Here's the Trump effect in person.
As I mentioned, we are not prepared to give that. The Biden crime family stealing the election. The Biden crime family stealing this election. The media's covering up. The media's covering up. The Biden crime family stealing this election. We want freedom for the world. You're stealing that. The Biden crime family stealing this election. The media's covering up. The media's covering up. The Biden crime family stealing this election. You was the freedom told Biden. You're stealing that. Phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, election interference, fake polls, suppression polls. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, we can't let that happen. This is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election. Winning all the key locations, few observers have been kept far away. So far, and people are using binoculars very far away. Votes have been in by election day, and they weren't. Votes are coming in after election day. Votes have been in by election day, and they weren't. Votes should be in by election day. The Biden crime family steal this election. The media's covering up. The media's covering up.
Yeah, that's called the Trump effect, and it's normalized by the media, and it's destabilized the entire country, and it's never going to be the same country. And Pooty descriptions are crazy.
Thanks for that question, Director Edwards. We did, as a team, look at a few national surveys regarding attitudes towards police and how they had shifted over the last few years. We could potentially share those links with you.
Remember who's talking here. Every one of these people in these little cubicles are elites. They are at home getting their full salaries, pretending to tell us out here in the world what's good for us. They have no credibility at all as far as I'm concerned. But, the world works that you have the elites and then you have the slaves. You have the oligarchy on the top, then you have the elites beneath them. All of these people are elites. They're not oligarchs. And then you have the serfs, which is the riders, the drivers, the mechanics, people like me.
If you're interested. John, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's right. I do think, and you heard this earlier from Anthony from Deloney from SEI, just that we're as safe as the community we serve, right? We're as peaceful or cooperative as what's happening in our region. And so obviously the last 6 months have been a struggle on many different levels. And I think you probably see some of that spilling into the survey. And I think Anthony said it very well. How do people generally feel about safety in their communities, let alone on public transit? So what we weren't able to do is just do a baseline. How do people of color or vulnerable populations feel amongst safety in their communities? And then be able to have a juxtaposition of, how different is that on public safety? And we don't have that baseline, but I do think we'll be looking at, as part of the go forward, at what else is happening around the country and what can we learn from.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from Alan?
I see Lori has her hand up.
It's not much of an answer. Lori?
Thank you. Can you, I just need a little additional explanation about that link that was shared on Twitter without sharing the source tag. What does that mean exactly? What's the impact?
Oh, sure.
She doesn't even know who that is. She doesn't even know what it is. These people are clueless. Clueless.
So We created a unique link for all of our different distribution channels, including Facebook and our website and our CBO partners, so we could see where all of our responses were coming from. The Twitter activity, they had a version where somebody had shortened the URL, so we didn't have that, but we think that a lot of those ones without sources were associated with that, the Twitter activity, which was mostly from folks who were expressing anti-policing attitudes and encouraging people as here's a way we can get our voices heard. We can help get transit police off of Trimet. So does that answer your question, Director Gunn?
Yes, that does. It's interesting to hear though that with other
here it is,
responses,
right here.
you can tell where they came from. I mean, were there some particular channels that were particularly
here's the original
good in eliciting responses?
Yes, more responses came from our Writers Club than from any other channel. The Writers Club is nearly 60,000 people strong, so that was not surprising. But we could send you more data about our distribution and our response.
60,000 people are on that stupid Writers Club nonsense.
Sources and channels.
I know they got tens of thousands of followers on fucking Twitter. I mean, Jesus. No, not me. Fuck, Jesus Christ. Trimet. Okay, people. Trimet. Okay, 64.6 thousand followers. Okay, and they don't tweet their board meetings or nothing. All they do is these feel-good things, and propaganda.
Interested.
Great. Thank you.
Director Way, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I finally figured out how to do the hand raising thing after a while.
Come on, Kathy, you stupid.
Madeline, thank you so much for the presentation. My question was just around any potential demographics that were collected for employees. Did we collect any demographics that you'd like to share? Or?
Yeah, we do have demographic information, not as much as for the public survey, but we asked about gender identity and race, ethnicity identity, how long they've been with Trimet, whether they were union or non-union. So that information is all available to you if you would like it.
That would be helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the board? I think they're probably all holding up for the end, John. So
Okay.
I would say we ought to keep moving here.
Excellent. Thank you, Madeline. And again, Madeline and Ginger did a ton of work. And
I don't know why John bugs me so much. There's something about that guy that just strikes me as fake.
we're eternally grateful. Next, we're going to hand the reins over to Dr. Michelle Neese, President of DHM Research, who is a long friend of Trimet and has done a lot of work for the agency.
They get part of the pork, okay? Pork. DHM Research gets a piece of everything. They got a piece of every contract. These people. They get a piece of everything in these people. Look at how big they are, man. Every look, see here it is. Trimet. Who's that? I've never heard of them. Well, I know they get more than just these four. All right. Oh, here, let's look at these are all the things they do here. Depends on, see, like if you want to click on like healthcare. What do they got? Oregon Health Insurance. Oh, yeah, right. All right, well.
They too took on multiple responsibilities and were just instrumental in bringing not just this data to you, but even helping us sort of design the process.
I wonder how much they got paid for this. You know, they didn't do this as volunteers. It was part of a contract of some sort, another pork barrel contract. I mean, there's just endless money for consultants.
So I think she's just going to go ahead and share her screen and give you a presentation on what was some of the findings from the community focus groups. Michelle.
Where is she? We don't get to see her. DHM, they do all the surveys for Trimet. Every single one of them.
Oh, sorry. I think you're muted, Michelle.
Yeah, technical difficulties. Come on now. You guys get it together, man.
Okay. Thank you. Someone help me. The little unmute button disappeared when I shared. Thank you all for having me here today. And I am... So the goals of my presentation are to try to really summarize a lot of work that happened. Some of it was done by DHM. We did focus groups with stakeholders. John walked you through that very quickly at the beginning of his presentation. So we did focus groups with different writers, with some of Trimet's internal communities, with various employees. We also helped support community-based organizations to hold their own focus groups. And in order to support that, we worked with some staff at the Coalition of Communities of Color to develop a set of questions that facilitators from each organization could walk into their discussions with, some instructions about how to get, diverse people around the table, how to hold the group, and then we asked them to record some of the data and write us a report about what they observed. And so I'll just point out that those community discussions, they're not designed to be research the way that DHM might do a traditional focus group, but they were designed to be able to give us a balance of letting the community organizations have conversations that were real and relevant to their community, and to be able to share it with us in a way that we could organize and synthesize information. I'm also today going to try to integrate some of our findings with what you just heard from Madeline, so I can try to tell a bigger story that says we talked to a ton of people, many, many hours of conversations and surveys went into building some clear points of consensus about recommended actions. And so that's really what I'm going to focus on. Like Madeline, there's pages and pages of reports that we have elsewhere. And today we're trying to keep that fairly short to help make sense of it all. Okay, so just briefly, a little bit of the number of people who participated in different phases. DHM's portions were 36 in the stakeholder groups, 59 employees. You can see the vast majority of the discussions happened in those coalitions and community-based organizations. And all the research took place from August through October. Okay. Here is a list of the different CBOs that participated in the discussions. I'm not going to read them all, but the goal I hope you can see from here is that there was a diversity in the community served, in the regional basis, with some in Washington County, some in Multnomah County, for example, or further out. And so just, again, trying to get a broad base and trying to also work with communities who could have those conversations in other languages. And so in that way, again, trying to expand the voices of who Trimet was here.
Yeah. Come on, hurry up. You're going too slow. Jesus.
As I suggested, they were pretty clear themes that came across in all of this work. Most of those we heard from agree that disruptive writers are the biggest safety concern that they have, and they broadly agree on 3 approaches. The community, employees, writers agree there should be a crisis intervention team at Trimet. They value and prioritize training Trimet staff on de-escalation and mental health issues. And they would like to see an increased presence of Trimet staff on board and at stations. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of each of those in a bit more detail and try to show you, again, the progression of results we have that led us to those conclusions. You just saw in Madeline's slides responses from the public survey about how safe people feel on bus and MAX. Those are those two columns on the left. And then on the right, you have how safe people in the focus groups feel. And so what is similar is that people tend to feel a little bit more safe on the bus compared to MAX. And then the feelings of safety might be a little bit lower in the focus groups. Again, they're not designed to be scientific. And also I think that reflects the fact that those focus groups intentionally were talking to some of the communities whose their writers are not following. Might be to say there's not a mandate that presence has to be one specific role.
They're doing the
Having
same thing
other
all over
staff
again.
around them is what makes them feel unsafe,
This
rather
is the
than
exact
the lack
same
of
information we just were presented
and,
with.
the Youth Environmental Justice Alliance at OPAL. There were other groups who...
geez, what a waste of time this is.
Makes those fine distinctions between who these Trimet personnel are.
In the focus groups, not necessarily. So the chart I showed you was from the survey, and they did describe in the survey what each of the role was. In the focus groups, I would say definitely the distinction between fare inspectors, the unarmed security, and transit police is not necessarily clear to people. So, for example, when we said, you know, Trimet made the switch from having transit police not enforce fares, several people said, well, they're still enforcing fares. And then a couple of those discussions, when they talked it through, they're like, oh, well, I actually don't know if that was the transit police or a fare inspector, right? We did give the CBO facilitators a packet of information that briefly laid out different roles and referred them to Trimet's website for, you know, more description and pictures. We encouraged them to show pictures at the focus groups. But again, you know, depending on time and their own infrastructure, that those discussions, that distinction may not have been clear to everyone in the community.
Did that answer your question, Director Ballin?
No.
That does, thank you. I mean, I think that's important for us I think we're all aware of that we who live with these issues understand those distinctions, but folks in the community may not. So I think that could inform our decisions going forward.
Great. Director Wade?
Yes, thank you so much again for this sort of higher level overview.
Ridiculous.
Just one of my questions was, I wonder if in your research and in the focus groups, did the topic around citations and, you know, maybe some shuffles with fare enforcement officers around some of the things that folks might be getting cited on, I am just curious if that has come up in your focus groups, because, and I know that we have gotten some presentations like that before in the past as well, with more data, but I am just, again, curious if that has come up at all. And then second, somewhat also maybe related to, you know, someone getting stopped in our system, I know that there's a lot of different changes that are happening right now in ID laws. Federal government, Real ID Act, and I think statewide there's a bunch of different things that are happening around, you know, ID. So, and I guess I'm just worried that, you know, that might be, again, a barrier for someone who's not English speaking, or for someone who really is still so new to this country, or even someone who's undocumented, you know, to show that and, you know, and be questioned by fare enforcers. So it's sort of a scenario that I just made up, but I'm just wondering if some of those themes have come up.
I think for your first question, I might not know the topics you have in mind. So one, it might if you tell me a little bit more. But in general, I think the conversations on fairs are probably not as detailed as getting into the nuances of the types of citations.
So boring.
I think it was
Come on, move it
Is the
along.
process that we're using.
to hear more.
Come on.
You know, we all have our own lived experiences that we can speak to.
Aren't you
And
the
from my
mayor,
lived
Gresham?
experience,
Get lost.
you know, I was in Denver a few months ago, and I got on the train to go from the airport to downtown, which was their transit train. And there was a police officer on there who was actually the one checking the fares. Right, it was a police officer, and you know, I tried to sit in the moment and experience it from a perspective of just, you know, not knowing transit, not having been on the board for over 8 years of a transit agency, and having this insight. And you know, I can tell you there were a number of people of color on the train. It was late at night, actually. It was it's probably about 11:30. And, you know, I tried to sit in that moment to say, I'm in a different city, in a different town, on a different transit system. How do I feel as a black man on this train with someone? And I can tell you that I personally, and this is only my personal experience, and I grew up, of course, as many of you know, in the inner city of Kansas City, Kansas, you know, one of the rougher, more violent towns and cities in America. And so I don't come from a place where, you know, I didn't grow up in the suburbs or anything quite like that. It was really in the heart of some of the more challenging situations that you could grow up in. And I can tell you that personally, I felt safer with the individual on the train. I was in this, you know, this new city on a new transit system. You know, so that was my experience. You know, I'm 47. You know, and that may play into it, similar to what Michelle shared, is that, yeah, we've got somewhat of an age difference, and, you know, younger folks are, you know, a little more reticent to have law enforcement available and around, and maybe some of the older individuals. I'm an older individual, but I'm still, you know, an African-American male, and that was my experience that I just had recently. So again, I think some of this is going to be informed by the recommendations, since the committee and group that was put together, I think, is a really good reflection of some great insight that we're going to receive in that regard.
Thank you. This is helpful, you guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, that's bullshit.
If you have any insight, please.
The only thing I would offer, President Warner, is if you look back at Michelle's slideshow, when she showed and giving context to some of them to prioritize where they think the resources should be dedicated. And what they came up with was the following. Their number one focus was training in anti-racism, cultural competency, mental health. All right, we'll
stop here, man. I mean, I can't take any more of this. I mean, can you believe this? A bunch of aristocrats going on and on and on and saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And it's just so pointless.